Are Texas lawmakers putting Democrats in charge of border security, plus 3 different election lawsuits that may have big implications coming up? I'm Brandon Waltons. This is The Headline. With a lot of attention right now being placed at what's happening on Texas's southern border, let's go back a little bit, back to the end of the most recent legislative session in May, when the legislature had the opportunity to pass significant legislation that would allow Texas to tamp down on this. Well, part of that involved a vote which put Democrats, protected Democrat positions on the Border Security Committee. Here to talk about what that means, why it is that 50 plus Republicans voted for that, we have Cary Cheshire, the executive director of Texans for Strong Borders. Cary, you have a commentary this week as we've been running commentaries over the last few weeks, taking a look at some of these moments that might have been sort of people might have missed or not noticed in the busyness of the legislative session. And this commentary specifically deals with a vote that is absolutely amazing, where Republican lawmakers were given the opportunity to say, hey, let's not protect Democrat positions on this Border Security Committee. And most of them voted against it.
Well, that's absolutely right, Brandon. I think it's important to view this vote in the context of, the ongoing debate that Republican voters have had about wanting elected officials to ban Democrat chairmanships in the Texas legislature. And then what happened on the very day that this bill came up for a vote, which is where Democrats worked together with liberal Republicans to kill House Bill 20, a transformative bill by State Representative Matt Schaefer that would have actually created a border protection unit, an empowered division of the Texas Department of Public Safety that would have actually been working to remove illegal aliens who make it across the Rio Grande and invade the state illegally. But what happened here is you had a bill that, they had a compromise behind the scenes. The stakeholders agreed, Brandon. Always interested that they don't ask the voters, the true stakeholders, on these kind of things. But the stakeholders had agreed that we're going to form this Border Security Advisory Committee, and we're going to stack it half Republican and half Democrats. Well, State Representative Tony Tinderholt came in and said, hey, if we had a police committee, would we put defund the police Democrats on it? Absolutely not. So why should we put open borders Democrats, who just killed the bill, worked with liberal Republicans to kill the bill that was actually going to help secure the border? Why are we interested in what they think on border security? Why don't we stack that with real strong Republican leaders? And sadly, 50 House Republicans, over 50 House Republicans said, no, Representative Tinderholt, it's more important to support Democrat spots on this committee than it is to actually secure the border. Incredibly frustrating.
It's strange, honestly, just looking at this particular piece of legislation. To me, it's strange that it stipulates a party affiliation at all. We should probably just put people on there that care about border security, which I think by and large, looking at the party platforms, would probably preclude most, if not all, Democrats, at least in the Texas legislature. What do you get the opportunity to talk to folks from other states? I always wonder what do those people think when they look at Texas and they see this kind of thing happening in the reddest state, the biggest border state?
They're just absolutely amazed, Brandon. Time and time again, you see this in the Austin swamp. They think, we need to have a mix of, half Republican and half Democrat. We need to be bipartisan. We need to have this blue ribbon committee. We need to have this other standing committee. And they do it time and time again. Well, the voters of Texas didn't want half Democrat, half Republican. If they did, they wouldn't be electing Republicans statewide in every single election since 1994. Literally, we're about to have 3 decades of straight up Republican leadership statewide because the Texas voters want Republicans in this. And not a single one of these Republicans campaigned and said, hey, I'm a state representative campaigning for your vote. I think we ought to put Democrats in charge of border security. I think they ought to have just as much of a weight as Republicans. That's not a winning message. It makes absolutely no sense. It's the swamp at its worst, and it's why we don't have a secure border here in the state of Texas. Texas could come up and stop the invasion. The Constitution's very clear. Article 1, Section 10 empowers of the U.S. Constitution, empowers the state of Texas to come in and stop the invasion, to stop illegal aliens from coming across our border and subverting our state, taking American jobs, and flooding our education and welfare systems. Republicans just lack the courage to fight the Democrats enough to do it.
As we look forward, there's some rumors I've heard, maybe certainly you've heard as well, that potentially border security could be an issue that's addressed in a future special session. The question is, right now there's been a lot of attention, of course, on those buoy barriers that the DOJ is suing over, and some of the other steps that have been taken over the last few months that have had some effect where there's in those areas where they've been deployed. The question is, special session, do we need legislation? What kind of legislation do we need to actually get the job done?
We absolutely need legislation, Brandon. We need Governor Abbott to call lawmakers back for a special session that at a minimum passes legislation similar to House Bill 20 to create a border protection unit. Right now, Border Czar Mike Banks, you've mentioned the buoys in the river. They're doing an all right job of actually trying to repel illegal aliens, but what it has the effect of doing is just shipping them to ports of entry where they come across, and Border Patrol, who should be repelling them, keeping them out of this country, is just processing them, letting them stay here, telling them to show up for asylum hearings 3 years from now. We need to actually stop them and send them back to Mexico. And then, of course, we've got millions of illegals already in this state. The most important thing that we can do is make this state inhospitable for them by passing a strong E-Verify law like the state of Florida did, like over 10 other states have done. And actually, interestingly, like almost every Republican candidate for president supports, but Texas continues to fall behind on. And then, of course, the most egregious subsidy is in-state tuition for illegal aliens, where we literally say that illegal aliens from Honduras get cheaper tuition at the University of Texas, at Texas A&M, at Texas Tech, than someone from Louisiana or Arkansas. Makes absolutely no sense to me. And so I think at a minimum, a special session of the Texas legislature, which you've heard the same rumors I have, that they might call one on school choice and that some other issues might be added. I think stopping the invasion and creating a border protection unit, I think passing a strong E-Verify law that protects American jobs for American workers, and I think ending in-state tuition for illegal aliens are issues that have to go on that call if we want to keep Texas, Texas.
In-state tuition for illegal aliens. It boggles the mind. Cary Cheshire, Texas for Strong Borders, thank you so much.
Thank you, Brandon.
We'll be right back.
Michael, millions of Texas voters went to the polls. They elected Republicans thinking that they were going to get a certain outcome. And then you have Dade Phelan, with the help of some bad actors in the Texas House who run as Republicans, have literally stolen the Texas House of Representatives away from the voters and given it to Democrats.
This week, Texas Scorecard has had coverage of a series of lawsuits, 3 lawsuits specifically, dealing with elections and election integrity. Here to break down what exactly those mean, what the results are, and what it means going forward, we have Erin Anderson. And like I said, we've got 3 stories dealing with elections. So I want to kind of break down each of those. I want to start with this first case, which is pretty interesting, where a federal judge has essentially said that mail-in ballots, you can't check for voter ID.
Well, that's right, Brandon. The case centers on the election integrity bill passed in 2021. It included a lot of provisions, one of those being that mail-in ballots now must include a voter ID number in the same way that in-person voters have to present a voter ID. Well, the very first election after that law took effect, there were a number of mail ballots rejected. People were just confused about the process, were leaving them off entirely. Well, the case goes to court, and the judge essentially says the requirement violates the Civil Rights Act because people are being denied their right to vote based on what they refer to as a paperwork error. Well, it's not really a paperwork error when it's a requirement that proves the identity of the person filling out the ballot. Again, just like an in-person voter has to do. So the question is whether this is an undue burden on the voter to actually put their correct ID, which, by the way, if it's missing or incorrect, they are allowed to what they call cure or correct this information with their local election official. So the judge has put out this preliminary ruling It will be finalized in a few weeks. And once that final order is in, we do expect the state of Texas will be appealing this decision.
How long has this been a requirement in Texas?
Well, it started in the 2022 election cycle because it was passed at the end of 2021. Remember, that was the big election integrity comprehensive bill that the Democrats broke quorum and fled to D.C. to try to postpone passage of. Well, it still got passed in the end. This is a common sense requirement that has been enacted elsewhere. So we expect this will probably be upheld in the end as a reasonable requirement for voters to prove their identity.
Going now to Harris County, certainly Harris County, largest county in the state. There's been a lot of attention on elections there. Now you have the Texas Supreme Court essentially saying, hey, this legislation that was passed by the legislature that would get rid of their elections administrator position, that has to go into effect now.
That's right, Brandon. Again, this was passed in the 2023 regular session, meaning it takes effect September 1. This, again, is a preliminary ruling here at the state level that says, for now, even though Harris County is challenging this law in court, for now, it can take effect. And the law essentially said any counties, these big counties with a certain population, which happens to just be Harris County at this time, cannot have an appointed elections administrator. They need to return those duties back to elected officials who are responsive directly to the public. And that's the county clerk, who will handle managing the elections, and the county tax assessor, who will handle voter registration. So Tanisha Hudspeth, who is the Harris County clerk and who has experience working elections in the past with the county clerk's department, is ready and willing and able to take over starting September 1 in preparation for these November 7th elections, which will be the constitutional amendments. And in Harris County, the big election is the Houston mayoral race. But Paul Betancourt, who authored this bill, he represents that area. He's a Republican. And the two officials taking charge of elections now are Democrats, by the way. It's not a partisan issue. It's a competency issue. He is accused the county of delaying with these lawsuits. The bill is intended to give time over the summer for the transition to take place, so that again the county clerk and voter registrar would be prepared for the November elections, and then of course for the big upcoming 2024 presidential election cycle.
Now the last case going, I guess, southeast to Galveston, which has been the center of a redistricting trial that could have big implications for the rest of the state.
Well, that's right, Brandon. This is a federal trial over redistricting maps drawn for the Galveston County commissioners. Like every county, they have 4 commissioner precincts. They have to redrawn every 10 years to rebalance population. But the case is really about how the Voting Rights Act is going to be applied going forward to all redistricting cases. So it won't just be counties, it'll be districts all across Texas and even beyond in some cases. So the issue is whether these new county maps violated the Voting Rights Act by being racially discriminatory, drawn on for racial reasons. There's a lot of evidence back and forth. So readers who want to know more of the details here, I direct them to the 4 articles I wrote on this redistricting case at texasscorecard.com. I was able to sit in on the second week of the 2-week trial, and the big issue that's going to have a bigger impact is whether or not what are called coalition minority districts are going to be allowed going forward. The Supreme Court has ruled that district lines can be drawn for partisan reasons. In other words, Democrat or Republican. Galveston County is very Republican. They've now drawn 4 what look like will be pretty safe Republican districts. But in order to create what they call a majority-minority district, they have to combine both Black and Hispanic voters to create one single minority group, and that's called a coalition. The Supreme Court has not ruled on that. Other districts across this country do not recognize those. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which hears cases from Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi, has upheld those in the past. If that gets overturned, that's going to have a huge impact on how district lines from school districts up to the state legislature are drawn in the future.
And we'll be keeping an eye on all of these cases. Erin, thank you so much.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you for watching this episode of The Headline. If you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead, hit like, hit subscribe, hit that bell so you can be notified every time we have new content for you here at Texas Scorecard. For right now, I'm Brandon Waltons. Have a great weekend.
No ads, no paywalls, no government grants, and no corporate masters. Just real news for real Texans. This is Texas Scorecard.